Why was everyone staring at her arm? Pre-dawn, California coast. The kind of cold that bites through combat fatigues and settles in your bones. 180 pairs of eyes locked onto one woman standing in formation. Lieutenant Mara Sullivan, rigid attention, chin up, gaze forward, and on her right forearm, visible beneath the rolled sleeve, a tattoo, a black widow spider, intricate, deliberate, permanent. The mockery started before the sun could rise. This is SEAL training, not some beach party, sweetheart. Sergeant Kyle Drake's voice carried across the training ground, loud, deliberate, designed for maximum humiliation. What's next? Butterflies on your ankle. Laughter erupted, sharp, cruel, the kind that strips dignity layer by layer. Mara didn't flinch. Her expression remained carved from stone. No reaction, just the steady rise and fall of her chest, perfect breathing rhythm. In, out, controlled. Bet she got it spring break, someone stage whispered from the rear ranks. Thought it'd make her look tough for the recruiters. More laughter, more judgment, 180 men, one woman, one tattoo, and assumptions that spread like wildfire through dry grass. But here's what they didn't know, what they couldn't see, what they'd never guess in 1,000 mornings like this one. That tattoo wasn't decoration. It was documentation. And in exactly 20 minutes, everything they believed about the woman standing before them would shatter like glass under a hammer. Lieutenant Jessica Thorne stood near the instructor line, the only other woman present. She shook her head with visible disdain. Competition wasn't welcome here. Solidarity was a luxury she couldn't afford. She'd fought too hard to carve her place in this brotherhood to tolerate another female who might dilute her achievement. Another woman meant divided attention, shared accolades, diminished specialness. So she joined the judgment, silent but present. Instructor Brian Walsh approached with measured steps. 2 decades of combat operations had taught him to read people, to see beyond surfaces. His eyes narrowed as he examined the tattoo more closely. The design was intricate, too intricate. Black ink formed geometric patterns around the spider's body, and there, barely visible in the webbing, coordinates. Suspicion flickered across his weathered features. Sullivan, his voice carried authority, that marking have some special meaning. Mara's gaze shifted to meet his, direct, unflinching. Yes, sir, it does. Care to elaborate? No, sir. The silence that followed felt heavier than the 60-pound ruck every trainee carried. Tension hung in the air like smoke. Then Drake's laughter shattered it, triggering another wave of mockery that rolled through the assembled personnel like thunder. They assumed mystery meant nothing. They thought silence indicated weakness. They saw a woman trying too hard to belong in a brotherhood built on blood and sacrifice. They had no idea who they were looking at. Walsh held Mara's gaze for 3 more seconds, searching for cracks in her composure, finding none. He turned away with a dismissive gesture. Fall in for morning PT. 5-mile run. Sullivan, you're on point. Let's see if that ink can keep pace. The formation moved with practiced efficiency, boots striking pavement in synchronized rhythm. Mara took her position at the front, aware of Drake positioning himself directly behind her. His breath hit the back of her neck when he leaned close enough that only she could hear. Going to enjoy watching you break, he murmured. They always break, always. She said nothing. Words were ammunition best kept in reserve. The run began under a sky transitioning from black to deep purple, stars fading as the Pacific horizon threatened sunrise. Mara settled into a pace that felt sustainable, not fast, not slow, just steady. Her breathing remained controlled, her stride economical. Behind her, the pack spread out within the first mile, some pushing too hard too early, others falling back to conserve energy. By mile 2, she'd pulled ahead of 60% of the male trainees, without appearing to increase effort. Her legs moved like pistons, mechanical, efficient, no wasted motion, no visible strain. Master Chief Tom Harrison observed from a checkpoint. made a note on his clipboard. Interesting. Most candidates showed fatigue markers by this point. Sullivan looked like she was warming up. Mile 3 brought Drake up beside her, his breathing harder than hers despite his larger frame and supposed superior conditioning. He increased his pace. She matched it. He pushed harder. She stayed with him, her expression never changing, her breathing never ragged. Frustration flickered across his face before he dropped back, unable to maintain the unsustainable speed he'd chosen. She finished in the top 15%, not first. That would draw too much attention, but strong enough to make a point without making a statement. Drake crossed the finish line 30 seconds later, sweat streaming down his face. He bent over, hands on knees, gulping air. When he straightened, his expression had shifted from confidence to something darker. "Beginner's luck," he announced to anyone listening. "Let's see how she handles the real stuff." The real stuff materialized after a 10-minute recovery period. Walsh gathered the unit at the obstacle course, a brutal configuration of walls, ropes, and barriers designed to break bodies and spirits in equal measure. Standard protocol called for completion in under 12 minutes with full combat load. Drake had other ideas. "Sullivan," his voice carried across the assembled trainees, "since you're so eager to prove yourself, let's make it interesting. 60 pounds in your ruck instead of 30. Show us what that spider tattoo really means." Mara accepted the additional weight without protest. The extra 30 pounds settled onto her shoulders like a familiar burden. She adjusted the straps with movements that suggested muscle memory rather than learning. Small detail, nobody noticed. The course began with a 12-foot wall. She hit it at speed, using momentum and technique rather than pure strength to vault over the top. The rope climb followed, 60 feet of braided hemp that burned palms and tested grip strength. Her hands moved in a pattern too smooth for someone supposedly new to this. Wrap like pull, wrap like pull. Efficient practiced. Corporal Ryan Jensen watched from the sideline with calculating eyes. He'd been assigned to monitor equipment, a mundane task that suited his real purpose. When Mara moved to the next obstacle, he stepped toward her gear bag with casual indifference, hand reaching for the water bottle. A small adjustment, a minor contamination. Nothing immediately dangerous, but enough to cause problems during the afternoon heat. "Leave it alone." The voice came from behind him, Corporal Emma Torres, arms crossed, expression neutral. "Whatever you're planning, don't." Jensen straightened, all innocence. "Just checking the equipment, making sure everything's secure." "Sure you were." Torres didn't move, didn't break eye contact. "Just remember, actions have consequences." Back on the course, Mara cleared the final obstacle. Her time logged at 11 minutes 42 seconds, top 20%, with double the weight. Walsh checked his stopwatch twice, certain he'd misread the numbers. Lieutenant Marcus Bell observed from the command tower, made his own notes. Something wasn't adding up. Sullivan moved like someone with extensive training, not book learning, field experience. The afternoon brought weapons qualification. The armory smelled of gun oil and possibility. Rows of M4 carbines lined the walls, each maintained to exact specifications. Walsh decided to test Sullivan's claimed weapons knowledge with something beyond the standard curriculum. Sullivan front and center. He held out an M4, magazine removed, chamber cleared. "You said you studied the manual. Field strip this weapon. You have 2 minutes." Mara took the rifle. Her hands found the familiar contours without hesitation. Muscle memory kicked in before conscious thought could interfere. Trigger group separated. Bolt carrier removed. Upper receiver disconnected from lower. Each component handled with precision that spoke of repetition. Thousands of repetitions. She completed the disassembly in 47 seconds. Walsh's expression shifted slightly. Reassemble. Her hands moved in reverse, smooth, confident, no fumbling, no hesitation, 52 seconds. The silence stretched. Walsh took the rifle, examined the reassembly, perfect. He handed it back. Load single shot, target downrange. She moved to the firing line. Magazine inserted, round chambered, stance automatic, sight picture acquired, breath controlled, trigger squeeze smooth. The shot cracked through the afternoon air. Downrange, the target showed a hole. Center mass, perfect placement. Again. 5 more rounds. 5 more perfect placements. Tight grouping that would make a veteran marksman proud. Drake stood at the rear of the observation area, his jaw clenched. This wasn't beginner's luck. This was proficiency that came from somewhere she hadn't disclosed. Walsh approached Mara at the firing line, his voice low, meant only for her ears. "Sullivan, where'd you really learn to shoot like that?" She met his gaze, steady, calm. "The manual, sir, like I said." "The manual doesn't teach muscle memory." "No, sir, it doesn't." "So where does it come from?" A pause, brief, calculated. "Experience, sir." "What kind of experience?" "The kind I'm not authorized to discuss, sir." Walsh studied her face, looking for deception, finding only truth wrapped in classified silence. He stepped back, nodded once, said nothing more. But something had shifted. A door had cracked open. Questions were forming in minds that had been filled with assumptions. Evening formation brought new tension. The day's performances had created ripples. Mara had outperformed 70% of the male trainees across multiple disciplines, with added weight, without complaint, without bragging. Drake gathered his allies in the barracks after dismissal. 6 men who shared his view that women had no place in special operations, that standards would be lowered, that tradition would be corrupted. "She's hiding something," Drake said, voice low, conspiratorial. "Nobody shoots like that without serious range time. Nobody handles a weapon like that without deployment experience." "So what?" Jensen leaned against his bunk. "She's prior service. Lots of people are." "No," Drake shook his head. "It's more than that. Did you see Walsh's face? He knows something or suspects something." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying she's not who she claims to be, and I'm going to prove it." Across the compound, in the female quarters, Lieutenant Thorne sat on her bunk, cleaning her weapon with methodical precision. Her mind churned with conflicting thoughts. Part of her wanted Sullivan to fail, to prove that Thorne's success was special, unique, unrepeatable. But another part, smaller and quieter, wondered, what if Sullivan was legitimate? What if she really belonged here? What would that mean for both of them? The thought unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. Mara stood outside the barracks, alone under stars that blazed in the clear California night. Her fingers traced the tattoo on her forearm. 7 stars worked into the spider's web, each one representing something, someone, a mission that had required everything and demanded more. Damascus Gate, the operation that didn't exist, the team that died on paper, 7 survivors who walked away with wounds that never made it into official reports. She'd been declared KIA, killed in action. Her family had received the flag. Her name had been added to memorial walls. For 3 years, Mara Sullivan had been dead while the woman wearing her face worked in shadows so deep that even darkness had shadows. Shadow Unit 7, direct action operations that couldn't be attributed to any government, missions that required deniability, operators who accepted they'd never receive recognition, never be acknowledged, never exist in any official capacity. 7 of them had survived Damascus Gate. 7 had returned to a world that believed them dead, and 7 had made a choice. Continue serving. Continue the mission. Let the dead stay dead while the living did work that couldn't be done in the light. The tattoo was memorial and promise, remembrance and commitment. But there was something else she hadn't told anyone, something the coordinates hidden in the web represented. Her resurrection. Because Mara Sullivan wasn't just here to complete SEAL training. She wasn't just here to prove women could meet the standards. She was here on orders, from people who existed even deeper in the shadows than Shadow Unit 7, from a command structure that operated outside normal chains, from decision-makers who understood that the next generation of threats required the next generation of warriors. Her mission was simple: get through training, document the barriers, experience the bias, collect the evidence, then use that evidence to change the system from within. She was an infiltrator, but not in the way anyone suspected. She was infiltrating on behalf of the future. A door opened behind her, footsteps approached, she didn't turn. "Can't sleep," Walsh's voice, quiet in the darkness. "Just thinking, sir." He came to stand beside her, didn't look at her, just stared at the same stars. 23 years I've been doing this," he said, "training operators, watching them succeed or fail, and you know what I've learned." "What's that, sir?" "People who have nothing to prove don't worry about proving anything. They just do the work." He paused. "You're doing the work, Sullivan, better than most, but you're not trying to prove anything, which makes me wonder why you're really here." She said nothing. The silence stretched between them like a tightrope. "I'm not asking you to tell me," Walsh continued. "Whatever you're carrying, whatever brought you here, it's yours to keep, but I want you to know something." He turned to face her finally. "This training is designed to find limits, to push people until they break, to expose weaknesses before they become fatal flaws in real operations. But some people don't break, not because they're stronger, because they've already been broken and put themselves back together. Those people are different, dangerous in the right ways, valuable in ways that can't be taught." He started to walk away, stopped, looked back. "That tattoo, those coordinates, 34, 4141 degrees N, 40, 0908 degrees E, that's Syria, Damascus province. 3 years ago there was an operation. Never made the news, never made official reports, but 7 operators died, or so the story goes." Mara's heart didn't skip. She'd trained for this moment, prepared for the possibility that someone might recognize the coordinates, might connect the dots. "I don't know what you're talking about, sir." Walsh smiled, small, sad. "Yeah, I didn't think you would." He tapped his chest, 2 fingers over his heart, a gesture that meant something in certain communities, recognition among those who'd walked similar paths. Then he was gone, footsteps fading into darkness. Mara exhaled slowly. The mission had just gotten complicated. Walsh suspected, knew, understood, but he wasn't going to expose her. He was going to let her complete whatever she came here to do. The question was, would others be as understanding? What happened when someone broke into a secure facility to find answers? Day 4 brought surf torture. Instructors called it conditioning, trainees called it hell. The Pacific Ocean in November was cold enough to stop hearts. Literally. Hypothermia was a feature, not a bug. The exercise was simple in concept, brutal in execution. Enter the water. Link arms with your boat crew. Stay there while waves crash over you. Remain there until instructed otherwise. The point wasn't to test physical endurance. It was to test mental fortitude, to find out who would quit when comfort became a memory and survival became a choice. Drake made sure Mara's boat crew was assigned to the longest rotation, 2 hours in water that felt like knives against skin, waves that hit like fists, cold that seeped into bones and made muscles forget how to function. She linked arms with the men on either side. Neither met her eyes. Neither offered solidarity. She was alone in a group, isolated by gender and suspicion. The first 20 minutes were manageable, uncomfortable but manageable. The body's initial shock response created a buffer. Adrenaline helped. By 40 minutes, that buffer was gone. Shivering started, violent, uncontrollable, the kind that felt like internal earthquakes. Teeth chattered hard enough to chip, fingers went numb, then feet, then everything else. Mara focused on breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Controlled, steady. She'd been colder, she'd been in worse situations. She'd survived conditions that would have killed others. This was temporary discomfort, nothing more. But the men around her were struggling. One was crying, not ashamed, just overwhelmed. Another was hyperventilating, panic attack building behind his eyes. The cold wasn't the enemy, the mind was. Fear of the cold did more damage than the cold itself. At 90 minutes, someone rang the bell. The bell, mounted on a post. 3 rings meant voluntary withdrawal. Quit. Done. Failure transformed into relief with 3 simple motions. One man from Mara's crew broke away, stumbled toward the shore, found the rope, rang the bell 3 times. The sound carried across the beach like a death knell. Then another and another. Within 5 minutes, 6 men from various crews had quit, chosen warmth over accomplishment, comfort over completion. Mara's crew was down to 4. She remained in the center, arms linked, body shaking, lips probably blue, but her eyes stayed focused. Her breathing stayed controlled. Her mind stayed present. Drake watched from the shore, expecting her to break, waiting for the satisfaction of seeing another female trainee quit, prove his assumptions correct, validate his worldview. But she didn't ring the bell. At hour 2, Walsh called them out. The survivors stumbled onto the beach. Collapse was expected, encouraged. Medical personnel stood ready with blankets and warm liquids. Mara walked out under her own power, shaking violently, but vertical. She accepted the blanket, drank the offered water, sat on the sand and let her body recover while her mind remained sharp. Impressive. The voice came from beside her, Lieutenant Thorne. She'd completed an earlier rotation, been out of the water for 30 minutes, warmed up, recovered. Mara looked at her, said nothing. I mean it, Thorne continued. Most guys half your size were crying before you even looked uncomfortable. Cold is temporary. So is this training, so is the pain, so is everything. Thorne paused. But the question is, what are you trying to prove? Nothing. Everybody here is trying to prove something, to themselves or others or the world. Nobody puts themselves through this without a reason. Mara turned to face her fully. What's your reason? Thorne stiffened. The question had landed in tender territory. To show that I belong here. You already belong here. You earned your trident. You proved it already. Then why does it feel like I have to keep proving it every single day, every single moment? One mistake and I'm not Lieutenant Thorne who made a mistake. I'm the female SEAL who made a mistake. My failures aren't mine. They represent every woman who might want to do this. Mara nodded slowly. That's exhausting. It is. So why do you see me as competition instead of company? The question hung in the cold air between them. Thorne's expression shifted. Surprise, discomfort, recognition. Because, she trailed off, started again. Because if you succeed, my success becomes less special. If there are 2 of us, I'm not unique anymore. I'm just one of the women who made it. And that feels like losing something I fought too hard to gain. Or, Mara said quietly, you could see it differently. If I succeed, your success gets validated. If I succeed, you're not an anomaly. You're a standard. If I succeed, you're not alone anymore. Thorne looked away, jaw working, emotions warring across her face. I don't know if I can think like that. Then that's something you'll have to work through, because I'm not quitting. I'm not here to diminish you, but I'm also not here to protect your uniqueness. I'm here to complete the mission, whatever that means. Thorne stood abruptly, walked away without another word. But something had been said, something had been heard. Whether it would change anything remained uncertain. That night, Jensen made his move. He'd been watching, planning, building his case. Sullivan was hiding something. Her personnel file had to contain answers, and personnel files were kept in the administration building, which was locked, but locks could be picked. He'd learned that skill years ago. 11:47 p.m. He approached the building through shadows, used his toolkit to defeat the lock, slipped inside, found the file room, located Sullivan's folder. Opened it. Basic information, service record, medical clearance, psychological evaluation, nothing extraordinary, nothing classified, just a standard lieutenant's file showing prior Army service. Infantry, 1 deployment, Iraq, standard tour, honorable separation, gap year, then Navy enrollment. Clean, simple, exactly what it should be. Too clean, too simple. He pulled out his phone, started photographing pages, documentation for later, proof that he'd accessed the file, evidence that he'd followed his instincts. That's when the lights came on. Master Chief Harrison stood in the doorway, expression unreadable. Corporal Jensen, working late. Jensen's mind raced. Excuses formed and died before reaching his lips. I was just committing a federal crime, unauthorized access to personnel records, breaking and entering, take your pick. They're all accurate. Jensen's face went pale. Harrison walked forward slowly. You want to know what's in that file? I'll tell you, it's exactly what it appears to be. A lieutenant's service record, standard, unremarkable, the kind of file that thousands of soldiers have. But she's not standard, she's too good, too trained. And that bothers you. Harrison's voice held disappointment. That a woman might actually be qualified, might actually be skilled, might actually belong here without some hidden conspiracy explaining it. That's not. Yes, it is. Harrison took the file from Jensen's hands. You're looking for proof that she doesn't deserve to be here, that there's some trick, some shortcut, some explanation that lets you maintain your belief that women can't really cut it. He closed the file. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave this building. You're going to delete those photos. You're going to never speak of this. And tomorrow morning you're going to ring the bell. You're going to drop from this training. Because we don't need operators who break laws to protect their egos. We need operators who respect their teammates. All of them. You can't make me quit. No, I can't. But I can court-martial you for breaking into this facility, for unauthorized access to classified materials, for violating about 6 different regulations, and I will, unless you make the smart choice. Jensen stared at the floor, shoulders slumped, defeated. Why are you protecting her? I'm not protecting her. I'm protecting the integrity of this program, and you're violating that integrity. Now, delete the photos, then get out. Jensen pulled out his phone, deleted the images, walked toward the door. Harrison's voice stopped him. For what it's worth, Jensen, Sullivan doesn't need protection. She's doing fine on her own. The person who needed protection tonight was you, from making a mistake that would have ended your career. Remember that. Jensen left, the door closed behind him. Harrison looked at the file in his hands, opened it, stared at the standard paperwork, then reached behind the visible pages, found the attachment, classified addendum, accessible only to those with specific clearance codes. The real file, the true service record, the operations that existed only in shadows. Shadow Unit 7, Damascus Gate, declared KIA, resurrected for specific mission parameters. Current assignment, evaluation of integration barriers within Special Operations Training Pipeline. Harrison closed the file, locked it back in the cabinet, turned off the lights, left the building. Some secrets were worth keeping. Some missions required darkness. Some operators deserved to complete their work without interference. And Lieutenant Mara Sullivan was one of them. What happens when the test becomes personal? Week 2 transformed training from physical challenge to psychological warfare. The instructors had identified who could handle the physical demands. Now they wanted to know who could handle the mental pressure. For Mara, that pressure came with Drake's name attached to it. He'd been reassigned, no longer just another trainee, Now he was an assistant instructor, a role that gave him authority, leverage, opportunity to make her life specifically difficult. His first act was to separate her from group activities, solo PT, solo runs, solo obstacle courses, all with added weight, all with shorter time requirements, all designed to create failure that could be attributed to inability rather than impossibility. She didn't complain, didn't protest, just executed each task with the same methodical precision she'd shown from day one. But isolation takes its toll, even on the strongest minds. Humans are social creatures. We need connection, community, belonging. Take that away and even the most resilient person begins to fracture. Not immediately, not obviously, but gradually, like stress cracks in metal that spread invisibly until catastrophic failure happens all at once. Mara felt those cracks forming. She'd been alone before, in enemy territory, behind hostile lines, in situations where discovery meant death. But that loneliness had purpose. Mission-driven isolation, temporary separation. This was different. This was rejection by people who should be allies, exclusion from a community she was trying to join, condemnation without trial. It hurt more than she wanted to admit. Day 11, solo ruck march, 20 miles, 80 pounds. She'd started at 400. Now it was 900 and she still had 6 miles remaining. Her shoulders screamed. Her feet were probably bleeding inside her boots. Her hips felt like they were grinding bone on bone. But she kept walking, one foot in front of the other, mechanical, mindless. The only way to cover distance was to not think about the distance, just the next step, then the next, then the next. At mile 18, she saw Walsh standing beside the trail, waiting. She didn't stop, didn't slow, just kept walking. He fell into step beside her. "Sullivan, you know why you're being isolated?" "Because Sergeant Drake believes I don't belong here, sir." "That's part of it, but there's more. You represent change, and people fear change more than they fear failure." "I'm not trying to change anything, sir. I'm just trying to complete training." "Your presence is change. Your success is change. Your existence in this pipeline challenges assumptions that have stood for decades. That's not your fault, but it is your reality." They walked in silence for 100 meters. "You're going to make it through this training," Walsh said. "I've seen enough to know that, but here's what I need you to understand. Making it through isn't the same as winning. You can complete every event, pass every test, meet every standard, and still fail the mission." "What mission is that, sir?" "The mission you're really here for, whatever it is, whatever you haven't told me." He stopped walking. She stopped too. "I know you're more than you appear to be. I know you have experience that doesn't show up in your official file, and I know you're here for reasons beyond personal ambition. So I'm going to ask you directly, what's the real mission?" Mara met his gaze, calculating. He'd earned honesty, even if it was partial honesty. "Integration, sir. I'm here to document what women face in special operations training, to experience the barriers, to collect evidence that can be used to improve the system." "Who sent you?" "People who believe the system can be better, should be better, must be better." Walsh nodded slowly. "And Drake, does he know?" "No, sir. Nobody knows except you now." "Does this mean you're not actually trying to become a SEAL? This is just an intelligence-gathering operation." "No, sir. I intend to complete training, earn the trident. The mission and the goal are the same. Can't document the full experience without actually completing it." Walsh resumed walking. She followed. "Then let me give you some advice. Documentation is important. Evidence is necessary. But don't let the mission make you forget the people. Drake is a problem, but he's not the whole story. Tor stopped Jensen from sabotaging you. Thorne is wrestling with her own demons about what your success means. Harrison is protecting you from administrative attacks. There are allies here. Don't let the mission blind you to that." "Understood, sir." One more thing, when this training is over, when you have your evidence, when you make your report, remember that the people you're documenting are human, flawed, products of a system that taught them to think a certain way. Changing the system is important, but destroying individuals in the process doesn't serve anyone. He stopped at mile marker 19. I'll let you finish alone. You've got 1 mile left, make it count. Then he was gone, and Mara was alone again with her thoughts and her pain and her doubts. 1 mile, it felt like 10. But she finished, crossed the line, dropped the ruck, sat on the ground and let exhaustion wash over her. Tors appeared with water, handed it over without comment, sat beside her. You know they're trying to break you, right? I know. And you know you can't let them succeed. I know that too. Tors was quiet for a moment. Can I ask you something? Why are you really here? And don't give me the standard answer about serving your country or proving women can do it. I mean really, why endure this? Why subject yourself to this treatment? Mara drank deeply from the water bottle, considered her answer carefully. Because someone has to, because change doesn't happen by asking nicely. Because the next generation of women who want to serve in special operations shouldn't have to face what I'm facing. They should be judged on capability, not gender, not assumptions, not fear of change. So you're sacrificing yourself for people you'll never meet. That's what service means. Sacrificing for people who will never know your name. Fighting battles that won't make history books. Enduring pain that won't earn medals, but doing it anyway because the mission matters more than the recognition. Tors smiled, small, genuine. You're going to make it, not because you're the strongest or the fastest, but because you understand what this is really about. Most people here are trying to become something. You're already something. You're just proving it. She stood, extended her hand, helped Mara to her feet. For what it's worth, you've got at least one ally in this place, maybe more than you think. That night Mara lay in her bunk, body aching, mind churning. The mission was progressing, evidence was accumulating, documentation was growing, but the cost was higher than anticipated. The isolation, the judgment, the constant pressure to be perfect while being treated as perpetually inadequate. She thought about Damascus Gate, about the mission that had killed her on paper, about the 7 teammates who'd survived and scattered to the winds, about the promise they'd made to each other. We don't quit, we don't fail, we complete the mission, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. She fell asleep repeating those words, a mantra, a commitment, a reminder that some things were worth any price. The next morning brought a surprise. Drake wasn't at formation. Master Chief Harrison stood in his place. Sergeant Drake has been removed from assistant instructor duties, Harrison announced. He'll remain in training as a candidate but will no longer have authority over other trainees. This decision was made after review of his conduct and determination that his methods were not aligned with program objectives. Relief swept through Mara, not because Drake was gone, but because someone had been paying attention. Someone had seen what was happening. Someone had intervened. Harrison caught her eye, nodded once, barely perceptible, acknowledgement, validation. The mission continued, but the path had shifted. Obstacles remained, challenges awaited, but the burden had lightened, slightly. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And sometimes justice doesn't arrive with fanfare. It simply appears when needed most. Could one moment change everything they believed about strength? Hell Week, the infamous 6 days that separated those who wanted to be SEALs from those who would be SEALs. 130 hours of continuous training, 4 hours of sleep total, cold, wet, exhausted, pushed past human limits into territory where only will survived. Mara stood with the remaining candidates at the starting line. Of the original 180, only 73 remained. The bell had claimed the others. Injury, illness, broken spirits, failed standards. Week 2 had been devastating. Week 3 would be apocalyptic. Hell Week started with a bang. Literally, instructors used blank ammunition and simulation grenades to create chaos, disorientation, the immediate message, your world just ended, welcome to hell. Boats, the candidates were divided into crews of 6. Each crew received an IBS, inflatable boat small, 289 pounds of rubber that would become their constant companion for the next 6 days. They'd carry it on their heads, row it through surf, drag it across beaches, live with it, hate it, but never abandon it. Mara's crew consisted of 5 men who'd maintained neutral attitudes, not allies, not enemies, just fellow sufferers accepting her presence without enthusiasm or hostility. The first evolution was surf passage. Row the boat out through breaking waves, navigate around buoys, return through the surf, repeat, for hours, in darkness, in cold that made earlier sessions feel like warm baths. Waves crashed over them, filled the boat, required constant bailing while maintaining rowing rhythm. The Pacific Ocean didn't care about human ambition. It was indifferent to determination. It simply was powerful, relentless, unforgiving. By hour 6, 2 members of Mara's crew were hypothermic, shaking violently, barely functional. The crew had to compensate, paddle harder, bail faster, cover for weakened teammates. Mara found herself pulling extra weight, literally. Her paddle dug into dark water with increased frequency. Her body moved beyond exhaustion into that strange state where pain became background noise. Muscles operated on autopilot. Mind focused on simple tasks. Paddle, bail, paddle, bail. Don't think about the cold. Don't think about the time. Just paddle. Hour 12 brought log PT. The crew carried a telephone pole. Wet, heavy, splinter-filled. They ran with it, did exercises with it, held it overhead until arms trembled and gave out, then held it some more. One crew member quit, rang the bell, sat by the fire reserved for quitters, warmth in exchange for dreams. 5 remained in Mara's crew. They looked at each other, made silent commitment. No more losses. They'd finish together or fail together. Hour 18. The sun rose on a landscape of human suffering. Trainees who'd started strong now shambled like zombies. Eyes hollow, movements mechanical, faces blank with exhaustion. But evolution continued. Around the world, each crew rowed their boat in a massive circle around the bay. Miles of rowing, darkness to light to darkness again. No rest, no relief, just continuous motion that ground bodies and spirits down to nothing. Mara's world had contracted to simple repetitions. Paddle, breathe, paddle, breathe. Her hands were raw, bleeding through gloves. Her shoulders felt like they were being torn from her body. Her back was one continuous scream of protest. But she kept paddling. Hour 24, first night complete. Hypothermia had claimed 11 more candidates. The bell rang throughout the darkness, each ring a defeat, each ring a relief for someone who'd reached their limit. Medical personnel monitored everyone closely, watching for signs of dangerous hypothermia, rhabdomyolysis, cardiac stress. They pulled 3 candidates who hadn't quit but whose bodies were shutting down. Survival trumped ambition. Mara's crew made it through medical checks. Barely. They were cleared to continue, a blessing that felt like a curse. Hour 30 brought rock portage. Navigate boats through rocky shoals, precise rowing in dangerous conditions. One mistake meant capsizing, injury, potential drowning. They executed the evolution with grim determination. Communication reduced to grunts and gestures. Coordination born of shared misery. Hour 36, second day. The sun offered no warmth, just light that illuminated exhaustion, faces gaunt, bodies trembling, movements slow. Whispers spread through the remaining candidates. How much longer? When does it end? Can I make it? The instructors provided no answers, just more evolutions, more cold, more sand, more surf, more suffering. Mara's mind began to play tricks. She saw things in the peripheral vision that disappeared when she looked directly, heard voices that weren't there, felt presences beside her boat that were just water and imagination. Sleep deprivation's gift, hallucinations that blurred reality and fantasy. Hour 48. Halfway, maybe, nobody really knew. Time had stopped meaning anything just now, this moment, this paddle stroke, this breath. 3 more boats rang out, entire crews making collective decisions to end the suffering. They helped each other to the bell, rang it together, sat by the fire together, found comfort in shared failure. Mara's crew continued. They'd stopped talking, stopped acknowledging each other. Each person was alone in their suffering, connected only by the boat they carried. Hour 60, third night approaching. The cold felt different now, deeper, like it was inside her bones, part of her DNA, permanent. But something had shifted. The instructors' voices seemed distant. The evolutions felt routine. Pain had become normal. Suffering was baseline. This was just existence now. She'd entered a state that few people ever experience. Beyond exhaustion, beyond pain, beyond thought, operating on pure will, the body had stopped protesting. The mind had stopped questioning. Only mission remained, complete, finish, survive. Hour 72. They were allowed to sleep, 4 hours, blessed unconsciousness. Mara collapsed where she stood, didn't make it to a assigned sleeping area, just dropped, unconscious before she hit the ground. 4 hours passed like 4 seconds. Waking was torture. Every muscle had locked, every joint had frozen. Standing required several attempts. Walking required conscious effort to make legs remember their function. But they stood, they walked, they continued. Hour 84, fifth day, over 3/4 complete. The finish line existed somewhere in the future, distant but real. Mara's crew had lost another member, medical pull. His body simply stopped responding. He'd given everything. His everything wasn't enough. No shame in that, just biology. 4 remained. They looked at each other. These 3 strangers who'd become brothers and sister through shared hell. No words needed, just understanding. They'd finished together. The final evolutions were intentionally brutal. One last test, one last opportunity to quit, one last push to find absolute limits. They found those limits, then pushed past them. Hour 120. The instructors called halt, gathered the remaining candidates. 47 had started Hell Week, 19 finished. Mara stood among them, barely. Her legs trembled, her vision blurred. Her hands were so damaged she couldn't close them into fists. But she stood, vertical, conscious, present. Master Chief Harrison walked down the line, looked each candidate in the eyes. When he reached Mara, he stopped, studied her face. "Lieutenant Sullivan, how do you feel?" She tried to speak. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Ready for the next evolution, Master Chief." A smile cracked his weathered face. "There is no next evolution. Hell Week is complete. You survived, against odds, against expectations, against people who wanted you to fail." He paused. "You proved something important this week. Not to me, not to them, to yourself. You belong here not because you're a woman, not despite being a woman, because you're a warrior, period." He extended his hand, she shook it. His grip was firm, respectful, equal. The candidates were released, allowed to stagger toward barracks, food, sleep, recovery. Mara walked alone, but differently than before. The isolation of the previous weeks had been external, imposed by others. This solitude was different. It was choice. It was peace. She'd proven what she came to prove, to herself, to the mission, to anyone paying attention. The human body has limits, but those limits are further than most people ever push. The mind breaks before the body. Fear stops people before capability. Comfort kills more dreams than failure. Hell Week had revealed truth, not comfortable truth, not politically correct truth, just truth. Some people can do this. Many cannot. Gender has nothing to do with it, will determines outcome. Desire plus determination equals success. She documented the barriers, experienced the bias, collected the evidence, but she'd also learned something unexpected. The barriers weren't as powerful as she'd feared. The bias could be overcome. The system, while flawed, still recognized excellence when confronted with undeniable proof. Change was possible, hard, painful, slow, but possible. That night she slept deeply, dreamlessly, completely. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, new opportunities to prove herself, but tonight she could rest, knowing she'd survived the unsurvivable, endured the unendurable, achieved what they said couldn't be achieved. Hell Week was over, but the mission continued. Why did the commander want to see her immediately? Week 6, training had shifted from pure physical torture to technical skills, diving, demolitions, small unit tactics. The candidates who'd survived Hell Week now learned the actual craft of being SEALs. Mara excelled. The technical skills came naturally, almost suspiciously naturally. Her dive profiles were textbook perfect. Her breaching charges were measured with precision that suggested experience. Her tactical movement showed instincts that transcended classroom learning. Walsh noticed, Harrison noticed, everyone noticed. But nobody said anything, because her performance, while exceptional, fell within the range of possible talent plus intensive study, impressive without being impossible to explain. Until the live fire exercise. The scenario was straightforward: four-person team, breach a structure, clear rooms, neutralize targets, extract. Standard close quarters battle drill that every SEAL had to master. Mara's team consisted of 3 men who'd become cautious allies. They worked together efficiently, communicated clearly, trusted each other's skills. The breach went perfectly. Door blown, team entered, first room cleared. Then everything went wrong. A target popped up unexpectedly, not part of the planned scenario. A malfunction in the target system had activated something out of sequence. It appeared directly in front of team member 2. He froze, just for a second. Surprise overrode training. But a second was too long. Mara moved, pure instinct, muscle memory from operations that officially never happened. She put 2 rounds center mass on the target before conscious thought could catch up with action. Smooth, fast, impossibly precise under stress. The room cleared, exercise completed, successful. But everyone saw what happened: the speed, the precision, the instinctive response that came from somewhere deeper than training. Walsh called halt. The team exited the kill house, weapons cleared, gathered for debrief. Walsh looked at Mara. "Sullivan, explain your shot." Target appeared. "I engaged, sir." Response time was 0.72 seconds from target appearance to first shot. That's professional operator speed. Competition shooter speed, not student speed. "I saw the threat and eliminated it, sir." "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" The question hung in the air, loaded, dangerous. Before Mara could answer, a voice interrupted from behind them. "She learned it from me." Everyone turned. A woman in dress uniform stood at the edge of the training area. Commander rank insignia, naval special warfare insignia, but more than that, an aura of authority that transcended rank. Commander Sarah Foster, though most people didn't know that name, because Commander Foster also had another designation: Director of Shadow Unit 7's Reconstitution Program. Walsh straightened to attention. "Commander, wasn't aware you were observing today." "I wasn't scheduled to be, but situations change. I need to speak with Lieutenant Sullivan, immediately, privately." Walsh looked between Foster and Mara. Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Yes, ma'am. Sullivan, you're released from training for the rest of the day. Report back tomorrow at 600. Mara followed Foster to a secure building away from the main training areas. They entered a SCIF, sensitive compartmented information facility. The door sealed behind them, soundproof, electronically isolated, a bubble of secrecy. Foster turned to face her. "We need to talk about your cover." "It's compromised." "It's cracking. That shot today." Walsh suspected before, but now he knows. "You moved like an operator with years of experience, because you are an operator with years of experience." Damascus Gate, Shadow Unit 7, 3 years of missions that never happened with a team that officially died. "I've been careful." "I know, but careful isn't enough when your instincts are that deeply ingrained. You can't unlearn years of training. You can hide it, suppress it, but in moments of stress, the real you emerges." Myra leaned against the wall. "So what now? Mission abort?" "No, mission evolution. We're accelerating the timeline. You've collected enough evidence, documented enough barriers, experienced enough bias. Now we use it." Foster pulled out a tablet, brought up files. "I'm briefing the Joint Chiefs next week. Integration assessment. You're the primary case study. Female operator with proven capability in actual combat operations. Then inserted into training pipeline under false identity to document systematic barriers. They'll crucify you for running a false flag operation." "They'll try, but I have documentation, authorization, oversight approval. This wasn't a rogue operation. This was sanctioned research, uncomfortable research, the kind that reveals truths people don't want to acknowledge." Foster swiped through more files. "You've proven what we suspected. Women can meet the standards when they're given genuine opportunity, when they're not sabotaged, when they're judged on performance rather than assumptions. But you've also documented how the system resists: Drake's harassment, Jensen's sabotage attempt, Thorne's internalized competition, the isolation tactics, the extra weight, the separate standards." "Not all of it was negative. Harrison protected me. Walsh suspected but allowed me to continue. Torres intervened. Some people tried to help." "Exactly, which proves the system isn't uniformly hostile, just resistant. Resistant can be changed. Hostile might require burning everything down and rebuilding, but resistant, that's workable." Foster closed the tablet. "Here's what happens next. You complete training, earn your trident officially, legitimately. Then you come to the Pentagon, present your findings, answer questions, defend your methods, and help us design a better system." "What about Shadow Unit 7? "Still exists, still operates, still needs operators, but we're expanding, diversifying, building something better. Your mission has always been bigger than just yourself. It's about creating space for others, removing barriers that limit capability, opening doors that have been closed." Myra was quiet, processing. "Walsh knows, or at least suspects. What do I tell him?" "The truth. He's earned that. Tell him who you really are, what you've really done, why you're really here. He'll understand. Men like Walsh care about capability, mission success, excellence. If you have those things, the rest is just details." Foster moved toward the door, stopped. "One more thing. After this comes out, you'll face criticism, accusations of deception. People will say you cheated, that you didn't really prove anything because you had prior experience. Don't let that narrative take hold. You proved exactly what needed proving, that women with proper training and genuine opportunity can perform at elite levels. The fact that you had previous experience just demonstrates what's possible when we stop limiting people based on gender." The door opened. The conversation was over. Mara left the SCIF and walked back toward her barracks. Her mind churned with implications. The mission was entering its final phase, documentation complete. Now came presentation, implementation, change. But first, she had to finish training. That evening she found Walsh in his office, knocked on the open door. "Sir, may I speak with you?" He looked up from paperwork, nodded, closed the door behind her. Sullivan, or should I say something else? Lieutenant Mara Sullivan is my real name, sir. The rest is more complicated. I'm listening. So she told him, not everything. Operational details remained classified, but the outline, Shadow Unit 7, Damascus Gate, declared KIA, Resurrection for Integration Assessment Mission, Commander Foster, the real reason she was here. Walsh listened without interruption. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. So you've been an operator this entire time, pretending to be a student, documenting how we treat women in training, collecting evidence of bias. Yes, sir. And everything you've done has been performance, playing a role. No, sir, that's the point. Everything I've done has been real. I didn't fake ability, didn't use special treatment, didn't rely on past experience beyond what any prior service member might have. I met the standards. The same standards every man here meets. The only difference is I came in already knowing I could meet them. Walsh leaned back in his chair. That shot today, that was real. That was instinct from actual combat experience. Yes, sir, couldn't suppress that. Target appeared. Training took over. I reacted how I've been trained to react. Damascus Gate. I've heard rumors, black operation that went bad. 7 operators KIA officially, unofficially. 7 survivors who chose to stay dead. Keep working, keep serving in shadows. And now you're here, coming back from the dead, to change the system. To prove the system can change, sir. Women can do this job when given real chance, when not sabotaged, when judged fairly. I'm living proof. Walsh stood, walked to his window, looked out at the training grounds. 23 years I've been doing this, training operators, and I'll admit something I'm not proud of. I had doubts about women in special operations, not because I thought they were inherently incapable, but because I'd never seen it work. Every attempt seemed to end in failure or lowered standards, so I assumed it couldn't work. He turned back to face her. You've proven me wrong, not by being exceptional, but by being competent, by meeting standards without drama, by doing the work without fanfare, by being exactly what we need, an operator who can operate. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. I contributed to the problem, my doubts, my assumptions, my failure to imagine something different. You did the hard work. You faced the hostility. You endured the isolation. You proved the point. He extended his hand. I'll support your findings when this goes public, when you present to the Joint Chiefs, when people push back. I'll testify that you earned your place here, that you met every standard, that you proved women belong in this community. Mara shook his hand. That means more than you know, sir. One question, after this mission ends, after you've changed the system, will you stay, keep operating, or does resurrection mean permanent return to the living? She smiled. Shadow Unit 7 is rebuilding, expanding, looking for operators. I'll stay in the shadows, it's where I belong. But now there will be more shadows, more operators, more diversity, better capabilities. Good, the shadows need warriors like you. The conversation ended, but something important had been acknowledged. She wasn't alone. Even in her deception, she'd found allies, people who cared about mission over politics, capability over comfort, excellence over exclusion. The next few weeks passed quickly. Training continued, technical skills refined, final evolutions completed. She excelled without dominating, met standards without exceeding them so dramatically as to draw additional scrutiny. Graduation approached. The survivors of training would receive their tridents, the warfare pin that marked them as Naval Special Warfare Operators, SEALs. Mara would receive hers alongside 17 others. Only 18 had made it through from the original 180, a 10% success rate. Brutal, but typical. The night before graduation, she sat alone outside her barracks, traced the tattoo on her arm, 7 stars for 7 survivors. Soon she'd add another marking, The trident, official recognition of capability. But the real victory wasn't the pin, it was the evidence, the documentation, the proof that could change the system. Tomorrow would bring ceremony, next week would bring revelation, next month would bring transformation. The mission was almost complete, but the work was just beginning. Sometimes the battles we fight aren't against enemies, they're against assumptions, prejudices, systems that resist change. Those battles don't end with surrender or victory. They end with slow, grinding transformation. One mind changed, one policy updated, one door opened. Mara Sullivan had fought that battle, in silence, in shadows, with dignity that didn't announce itself but simply acted. And tomorrow, she'd stand with her fellow graduates, not as a woman breaking barriers, just as an operator who'd earned her place. The rest would reveal itself in time. What does vindication look like when the truth finally emerges? Graduation day. Families filled the stands, flags whipped in the coastal wind. The sun blazed overhead with that perfect California intensity that made everything feel significant. 18 candidates stood in formation, dress uniforms immaculate, postures rigid, faces betraying no emotion. Behind them, instructors who'd broken them down and rebuilt them into something harder. The ceremony began with standard military ritual, anthems, speeches, accolades. Rear Admiral James Crawford presided, a legend in the special operations community, 2 decades of combat leadership, voice like gravel and authority. He spoke about heritage, tradition, the responsibility that came with the trident, the expectations that would follow them throughout their careers. "You are now part of a brotherhood that stretches back generations," Crawford said. "You carry the legacy of every SEAL who came before. Honor it, protect it, uphold it." One by one, graduates stepped forward, received their tridents, shook hands, returned to formation. When Mara's name was called, silence rippled through the crowd. The only woman, the anomaly, the disruption to tradition. She stepped forward, crisp, professional, no hesitation. Crawford pinned the trident to her uniform, looked into her eyes. "Congratulations, Lieutenant Sullivan, you've earned this." "Thank you, sir." She turned to return to formation. That's when she saw her. Commander Foster, standing at the edge of the ceremony area. Beside her, a civilian in a dark suit, no insignia, no identification, just presence that screamed authority beyond military rank. Foster caught Mara's eye, nodded once, time. The ceremony concluded. Families rushed forward to congratulate graduates. Mara stood alone. No family, no friends, just mission. Walsh approached. "Sullivan, hell of a journey." "Yes, sir." "Commander Foster wants to see you, along with Admiral Crawford. Conference room B now." Her stomach tightened. This was it, the reveal, the reckoning. She followed Walsh across the compound. They entered a building, climbed stairs, entered a room where Foster, Crawford, and the civilian waited. Crawford spoke first. "Lieutenant Sullivan, take a seat." She sat ramrod straight, hands folded, expression neutral. "I'm going to be direct," Crawford said. "Commander Foster has briefed me on your real mission here. Shadow Unit 7, Damascus Gate, your resurrection for integration assessment purposes, the documentation you've gathered over the past 6 weeks." He paused, let that sink in. Under normal circumstances, running a covert operation within our own training pipeline would be grounds for court-martial. For you, for Commander Foster, for anyone involved, deception, false identity, potential espionage. The charges practically write themselves. Mara's face remained impassive, but internally calculations spun. Had she misjudged? Was the mission compromised? Crawford continued. "However, these are not normal circumstances. Your operation was authorized, documented, overseen by appropriate authorities, which brings us to why Mr. Carter is here." The civilian spoke for the first time. Deputy Director Carter, Defense Intelligence Agency. Lieutenant Sullivan, your mission was authorized at the highest levels. SecDef approved. Congressional oversight informed. This wasn't a rogue operation. This was sanctioned research into integration barriers within special operations training. He opened a folder. Your documentation is extensive, detailed, damning. You've recorded 47 separate incidents of gender-based discrimination, 12 instances of deliberate sabotage attempts, 23 cases of isolation tactics, 8 examples of applying different standards, all supported by time-stamped records, witness statements, and objective performance data. Carter closed the folder. This evidence will be presented to the Joint Chiefs next week, alongside your testimony. The goal is not to punish individuals. Drake has been reassigned. Jensen faces administrative action. But the goal is system change, policy reform, creating genuine pathways for women in special operations. Crawford spoke again. Sullivan, I won't pretend this doesn't complicate things. You've earned your trident legitimately, met every standard, passed every test, but some people will say you cheated, that having prior experience invalidates your accomplishment, that you didn't really prove anything. With respect, sir, I proved exactly what needed proving, that a woman with proper training can meet SEAL standards. My prior experience came from actual combat operations. If that disqualifies me, then every prior service member who enters this pipeline is disqualified. The point isn't whether I specifically could do it. It's whether women generally can do it when given genuine opportunity. Crawford smiled, thin, tight. That's the argument we'll make, along with data showing that your physical performance fell within the normal distribution of male candidates. You were good, not superhuman, not impossible, just competent, which proves the standards are achievable. Foster interjected. Mara, the Joint Chiefs meeting will be intense, hostile. You'll face questions designed to discredit you, undermine your findings, protect the status quo. Are you prepared for that? I've faced hostile fire in 6 countries, ma'am. I think I can handle hostile questions. Different kind of combat. Same principles. Stay calm, stick to facts. Don't react to provocations, complete the mission. Carter stood. Then we're agreed. Next week, Pentagon, you'll present findings, answer questions, defend your methodology. Commander Foster will provide operational context. Admiral Crawford will testify regarding your performance, and I'll present the analytical framework showing how your data fits into broader integration research. He moved toward the door, stopped. One more thing. Regardless of how this plays out, your service is appreciated. You put yourself in a difficult position, endured significant hardship, for a mission that may not immediately bear fruit. That takes courage beyond what most people possess. Then he was gone, and Myra was left with Crawford and Foster. Crawford leaned forward. Sullivan off the record. Was it worth it? The isolation, the harassment, the constant pressure. Yes, sir, because now we have evidence. Not anecdotes, not feelings. Hard data showing what women face and proving they can overcome it. That evidence will outlast my discomfort. You're an idealist. No, sir, I'm a realist. I know change is slow, painful, incomplete, but I also know it's necessary. Our adversaries don't limit their talent pools by half. Neither should we. Crawford stood, extended his hand. Then let's go change some minds, Lieutenant. The next week, Mara traveled to Washington, Pentagon, the building that housed more power, politics, and military bureaucracy than anywhere else on Earth. She wore her dress uniform, trident gleaming, ribbons displaying deployments that officially never happened. Shadow Unit 7's operations had left marks in classified records only. The Joint Chiefs gathered in a secure conference room, 4-star generals and admirals representing each service branch, plus civilian oversight, congressional staffers, policy analysts. everyone who had a stake in the integration debate. Foster presented first, operational overview, mission authorization, methodology, then she introduced Mara. Lieutenant Sullivan will present her findings, then answer your questions. I ask that you listen with open minds. Her data challenges assumptions, but it's data, not opinion, not ideology, empirical evidence collected under controlled conditions. Mara stepped to the podium. No notes. She'd lived this data, bled this data. Gentlemen and ladies, I'm here to discuss my 6 weeks embedded in SEAL training, not as a student, as an operator documenting barriers. I came in with years of combat experience. Shadow Unit 7, Damascus Gate survivor, resurrected for this specific mission. Murmurs rippled through the room. She continued. I met every standard. No accommodations, no special treatment, same weight, same times, same requirements. My completion rate matched male candidates. My performance fell within normal distribution. I proved women can meet existing standards when given genuine opportunity. General Marcus Thompson, Army Chief of Staff, interrupted. Lieutenant, your prior experience invalidates your findings. You had advantages no normal candidate possesses. With respect, sir, I had experience. So do many male candidates, prior service, law enforcement backgrounds, athletics. Nobody suggests their prior experience invalidates their success. Why does mine? Because you were already an operator. This wasn't a true test. Sir, I would argue it was the truest test. I knew what the standards required. I knew I could meet them. The test wasn't my capability. It was whether the system would allow me to demonstrate that capability, and the system resisted, actively, deliberately, systematically. She brought up her first slide, documentation of harassment, isolation tactics, sabotage attempts. These aren't feelings. These are facts, time-stamped, witness-verified, objectively documented instances where I faced barriers my male counterparts didn't face. Admiral Patricia Hughes, Chief of Naval Operations, leaned forward. Lieutenant, I've read your report. I'm troubled by these findings, but I'm also troubled by your methodology. You deceived your instructors, lied about your background. How can we trust data gathered through deception? Ma'am, undercover operations require deception. We don't dismiss intelligence gathered by undercover agents because they lied about their identities. We evaluate the intelligence on its merits. I request the same consideration. Hughes wasn't satisfied. But you were operating within our own organization, spying on our own people. I was documenting systemic issues, ma'am, not collecting intelligence on enemies, not betraying confidences, not compromising operations. I was observing how the system treats women. That observation required authentic experience, which required concealment. The questions continued for 3 hours, hostile, probing, skeptical. But Mara held her ground, stuck to facts, refused to be defensive or emotional. Finally, General Thompson called for a break. We'll reconvene in 30 minutes. Lieutenant Sullivan, you're dismissed. We need to discuss this among ourselves. She exited, found an empty hallway, leaned against the wall, exhaled slowly. Foster appeared beside her. You did well, better than expected. They're not convinced. Some are, others never will be, but we planted seeds. That's all we can do. 30 minutes later, they reconvened. Thompson spoke for the group. Lieutenant Sullivan, we've discussed your findings. There's no consensus. Some of us believe your data proves integration is possible. Others believe your unique background makes your success non-replicable. However, we agree on one thing. Your service deserves recognition. He pulled out a box, opened it, inside medals. For your operations with Shadow Unit 7, Damascus Gate and subsequent missions, awards delayed by classification, but your cover is now official. These are yours. Bronze Star with Valor Device, Purple Heart, 2 of them, Navy Commendation Medal, others. Mara accepted them, felt their weight, not just metal, acknowledgement, validation. "Thank you, sir." "One more thing," Thompson said. "Regardless of how we proceed with integration policy, you've earned your place. Your trident is legitimate. Your service is honored. Whatever happens next, remember that." The meeting adjourned, inconclusive but not failure. That evening, Mara returned to her hotel, laid out the medals on the bed, stared at them. Representations of missions that had cost blood, teammates who hadn't survived, scars that told stories. Her phone buzzed, text from Foster. "CNO wants to talk. Tomorrow, private conversation might be movement." Hope flickered, small but present. The next day, Admiral Hughes met her at a quiet cafe. Civilian clothes, no rank visible, just two people talking. "Sullivan, I wanted to apologize. Yesterday I was harsh, playing devil's advocate, representing institutional resistance, but privately, I believe your data. I've seen the same patterns throughout my career. The double standards, the isolation, the barriers, I've experienced them, never at SEAL level, but similar." She sipped her coffee. "I can't change policy alone, but I can influence it. I'm forming a task force. Integration assessment, policy recommendations. You'll be on it along with Foster, Walsh, others who understand the real issues." "What's the goal, ma'am?" "Genuine pathways, not token opportunities. Real standards applied fairly. Systems that judge capability without gender bias. It won't be fast, it won't be easy, but it will be real." "When do we start?" "Monday, Pentagon. Bring your data, your experience, your insights. We're going to build something better." They talked for another hour about barriers, solutions, resistance, allies. When they parted, Mara felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope, real, tangible, achievable. The mission had evolved, from documentation to implementation, from proof to policy, from breaking barriers to building bridges. 3 months later, policy changes began rolling out. Revised training protocols, objective standards, bias training for instructors, oversight mechanisms. Small changes, incremental improvements, but movement, progress. Mara returned to Shadow Unit 7, now officially reconstituted, expanding, recruiting women and men based purely on capability. She trained new operators, shared lessons learned, built the future one person at a time. One afternoon, she received an email from Corporal Chen, the trainee who'd asked about classified operations. "Ma'am, I passed selection. Shadow Unit 7, reporting next month. Thank you for seeing potential I didn't know I had." Mara smiled. The cycle continued, the mission expanded, the work persisted. She touched her tattoo. 7 stars, 7 survivors, but now more, the trident joining the spider, official and unofficial, light and shadow, past and future. Her phone buzzed again. New message, new mission, somewhere dark, somewhere necessary, somewhere only operators like her could go. She packed her gear, checked her weapons, prepared to disappear again. Because some warriors operate in spotlights, others in shadows. She'd done both, proven capability in both, opened doors in both. Now she'd continue serving in both, as needed, without recognition, without expectation. The mission always mattered more than the acknowledgement. The service transcended the ceremony. The sacrifice spoke louder than the salute. Mara Sullivan touched her trident one final time, then walked into darkness, where she belonged, where she was needed, where she'd always been. The shadows welcomed her home, and the future welcomed women who'd follow her path, not because she'd made it easy, because she'd proved it was possible. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Sometimes change doesn't announce itself, it simply happens. One policy at a time, one operator at a time, one mission at a time, until the shadows are filled with warriors who belong there, and the light recognizes them all.